A Democrat on the ballot faces felony charges. She's accused of lying about where she lives. A 100-car pileup on an icy morning. How in the world do insurance companies begin to figure out who is to blame for this mess?
We're going to start at ground zero.
And we're cooking with cannabis. Well, we are not. I don't think that would be allowed at 9 News, but it is allowed in culinary classes at MSU Denver. I say it's high time for that. And for next. A Democratic state legislator who's on the ballot next week was just arrested. Prosecutors charged State Rep. Tracey Bernett with several felonies for allegedly lying about where she lives so that she can run for the state house in Louisville instead of Longmont. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
Cell phone tower pings, license plate reader scans, a search warrant for this apartment, social media searches, and a request for Google history. No, I'm not describing the hunt for an armed and dangerous individual. Those are the methods the Boulder County District Attorney's Office used to see if a state lawmaker lied about where she lived in order to run for office in a more favorable district. Boulder County's Democratic DA charged Democratic State Representative Tracey Bernett with 3 felonies and 2 misdemeanors about misrepresenting where she lived to run for office, voting from a false address, and lying to an officer about her address. Here's the gist. Because of redistricting, which happens every 10 years, the boundaries of the state House districts have changed. Over the last 2 years, Bernett has represented House District 12 while living in Longmont. Following redistricting, that home is now in House District 19, and voter registration in that district makes it a bit of a toss-up, with an almost equal number of Republicans and Democrats behind the majority of unaffiliated voters. Bernett filed paperwork 1 year ago listing a Louisville apartment as her new address, which is within the boundaries of the new House District 12, which has a much more favorable voter registration for a Democrat to win. State law requires a House candidate to live in a district for 1 year before they can run for that seat. In September, a Republican filed a complaint with the DA's office saying Bernett did not really live in Louisville. The DA's office got a search warrant to look inside the Louisville apartment and found a near-empty refrigerator, cobwebs on the cabinets, and few clothes in the closet. Prosecutors interviewed a resident who said the blonde lady, who was a congressperson or something, wanted to take a selfie, saying it seemed like she was trying to make people think she actually lived at the complex. Then there are the cell phone tower records that found the majority of her calls connected to towers closer to the Longmont address. And the DA's office got body camera footage from a July traffic stop where an officer asked her if her license was correct. Bernett said it was. It showed the Longmont address. These charges do not change the fact that Bernett is on the ballot for Tuesday's election in the heavily Democratic district where she may not actually live. I reached out to Bernett, and she did not respond. Let's look far ahead, Kyle. Let's say Bernett wins Tuesday and perhaps gets convicted of lying of where she lives. There would not be a special election because of state law that says vacancy committees get a pick. So if a Democrat wins, the Democratic Vacancy Committee gets to pick, regardless of how that Democrat got in office.
We've heard about these cases, these allegations before, and a lot of times it's just like, well, there's one address on the paperwork, but it seems like it might be someplace else. That evidence that they've collected, I mean, innocent until proven guilty, but holy smokes, it looks like they got her dead to rights.
I checked in with El Paso County, which is looking into a Republican state senator who also is accused of not living where they say they are living. I asked, did you do all these different searches? They say the investigation is active and ongoing, which started a month before this one. Active and ongoing, but we're not going to tell you what the methods we're using are.
Wonder if they peeked in his fridge. That's smart. That's smart. I like that. All right. Thank you, Marshall. 6 in 10 Colorado Republicans surveyed do not have trust that elections are carried out fairly. But that's actually an increase in faith in elections since last year. So we get these numbers from the CU Political Climate Survey. They do this each fall. The polling found 73% of Colorado's Democrats and 41% of Colorado Republicans have faith in elections nationwide. That's actually up from 66% of Democrats and 32% of Republicans last year. Voters from both parties have more faith in Colorado's elections, but a bit less than half of Republicans surveyed still don't think that elections are fair in Colorado. This year, 92% of Democrats said that they trust our state's elections compared to 57% of Republicans. 4 days out from Election Day, and the ballot returns, pretty pathetic, honestly. For all the talk about this election year being so crucial, Coloradans who love to vote, I mean like second highest voter turnout in America, just behind Minnesota, we are returning ballots at a slower rate than the last midterm in 2018. Ballot returns do, however, show how much unaffiliated voters have grown into by far the largest block of voters in our state. So this time in 2018, about 38% of active registered voters were unaffiliated. Fast forward to 2020, and unaffiliated were 41%. Now, 2022, unaffiliated voters are 45% of active registered voters. So let's look now at who has returned ballots so far. Unaffiliated voters have returned the most, followed by Democrats, followed by Republicans. 4 years ago at this day, Democrats and Republicans were neck and neck in returned ballots. Here's something to watch, though. She got these right-wing conspiracy theory groups out there telling Republicans that elections are rigged and the way to beat it is to hold on and wait and then vote on Election Day. So we'll see if Republicans suddenly make up their margin late. Either way, though, it's no surprise that unaffiliated voters will decide elections in Colorado this year. So, you know, happens every fall into winter. It'll snow a little bit. A bunch of people just forget how to drive. Denver police still haven't said exactly what caused a 100-car pileup at 6th and Calumet this morning, but if you were out when the roads were slicker than a politician, you probably have a good guess as to what happened. 100 cars tangled up is quite the mess, especially if you're in the business of figuring out which driver was at fault. Our Steve Steger looked into how insurance companies handle claims when all hell breaks loose.
I just thought, like, okay, we're good, we're stopped, and then I immediately got hit from the backside.
A morning mess
I look in every car's stop.
was actually cleaned up pretty quickly. Sorting through all of this, though, that's the part that will take a while.
Insurance companies will investigate.
How on earth do you figure out who's at fault in a crash like this?
The at-fault driver is responsible. Unfortunately, in this kind of pileup, determining that's tough.
Carol Walker with the Rocky Mountain Insurance Information Association says it may not boil down to just one driver who was traveling too fast on a highway that resembled a skating rink.
The problem when you have a multi-car crash is multiple drivers likely were at fault. Following too closely, not braking, speeding for conditions. In Colorado, we have comparative negligence laws. What that means is one driver may not be 100% at fault. It could be, but likely someone's 20%, 50%.
Bottom line is anyone involved in a crash like this should call their insurance company first. They will cover the costs that you have right now, like repairing or replacing your smashed up mess. And in the meantime, the cops will do their thing, insurance companies will investigate even more, and they'll figure out who owes what.
And then as they do determine fault, your insurance company can help you figure that out and even subrogate.
We're going to start at ground zero. We're going to make the phone calls and hope for the best.
Hoping for the best after a morning mess with the best silver lining.
I think all of us who just walked away were just happy to walk away.
I don't know about you, but I saw all of this on TV this morning, sipping my coffee, and thought, is this going to make my insurance rates and all of our rates go up? There will likely be a lot of loss from a crash like this, but Carol Walker says it shouldn't be reflected in our premiums, Kyle, though premiums are going up because of auto theft, because of obviously other situations that happen, a lot more crashes than we usually see, but not necessarily related to this one incident.
My takeaway from that story, Steve, is the idea of, what is it, comparative negligence. I'm going to take that into my next argument with my wife. Like, I'm not saying it's your fault, but based on comparative negligence, wouldn't you say it's maybe 80% you and 20% me? We'll see how that goes.
Like 30% you, 70% me. Maybe like take the more of the blame.
One of those. Yeah, I'm going to subrogate the blame to you, 80% of it.
I believe comparative negligence was written on a few report cards when I was a kid, but I don't know.
Encourage all viewers, use that at home. Comparative negligence. Thank you, Steve. So Colorado's rising crime rate, you just heard Steve talking about auto theft, is having a number of ripple effects that we've covered here. And I caught wind recently that a statewide nonprofit's Crime Victim Emergency Fund is running low on funds through the end of this year. Since Wednesday, you have raised more than $10,000 to directly help crime victims through the nonprofit Colorado Organization for Victim Assistance. They're longtime players in this space, and all of their referrals for help come through official sources, so prosecutors, police, domestic violence shelters. Often this nonprofit will pay for a hotel room or even moving expenses if a victim or a whole family needs to get out of an unsafe situation after a crime. If the perpetrator of the crime was the one paying the bills for the victim, then the fund can help them with rent or with utility payments. Scan that QR code on your screen to get the link to give, or you can find it in the Next section on 9news.com or on any of Next social media accounts or on my own social media accounts. This nonprofit is trying to stretch their funds through November and December. They'll get more funding in January. So anything that we can come up with here will go toward keeping Coloradans safe and alleviating the financial hardships that come with being a victim of crime.
You're asking, so we'll answer. With so much on our ballots, is it okay to skip voting on a race or an issue, or what if you skip most of them? And MSU Denver infuses a traditional cooking class with a new ingredient. Next.
Colorado's Constitution allows for property tax breaks for seniors and disabled veterans. And there's a ballot issue this year that asks if you would extend that benefit to a third group. Marshall Zellinger is back to break down Amendment E.
The homestead exemption is a property tax cut. Seniors older than 65 who have lived in their home for longer than 10 years and disabled veterans can get a discount. A yes vote on Amendment E allows Gold Star spouses to also receive this discount. A no vote makes no changes to the homestead exemption. A Gold Star spouse is the surviving spouse of a service member who either died in the line of duty or died from a duty-related injury or disease. The state estimates that 490 Gold Star spouses would qualify if E passes. The property tax break works like this. 50% is exempted of the first $200,000 value of the home. Put another way, it knocks a maximum of $100,000 off the home's value when determining how much property tax that homeowner owes. Since your property tax depends on where you live and the value of your home, the savings would be different for any homeowner. Based on the average property tax rate last year, the homestead exemption saves a few $100s. Last year, more than 250,000 seniors and 9,000 veterans received the property tax exemption. Combined, they did not have to pay $162 million. The state reimburses that money to counties to distribute to all the agencies that rely on property tax money, like cities, school districts, and fire protection districts. If Amendment E passes, the state estimates it would have to reimburse another $288,000 for up to 490 Gold Star spouse exemptions.
We get it. There is a lot on your ballot. Tonight's next question comes from a viewer named David Mosier, who wants to know if he just leaves a race or an issue blank.
David, leave anything you want on your ballot blank. That's just known as undervoting, and it happens all the time once you get down past the top couple of candidates and big issues. So vote on the races and the issues where you feel confident, and if you don't want to vote on a race or an issue, you're totally welcome to skip it if you choose.
Well, after our snow and cold temperatures tonight, going to drop back into the 20s and 30s across the eastern plains. Into the mountains, a few spots will dip down to the teens, but a lot of 20s and 30s overnight into the mountains as well. Now, for tomorrow here in Denver, we do warm things on up. But, and this is a pretty big emphasis, look at the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Those winds here in Denver, 15 to 25, maybe even 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But into the foothills west of Denver, those gusts could get on up into the 75-mile-an-hour range. That could be strong enough for some scattered, even isolated power outages here into the foothills west of Denver, western Boulder, western Larimer counties, most prone to getting some of those. Here's a look at some of those winds as we get into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. Could see some of those winds, again, cranking on up into the 60, 65-mile-an-hour range. And some isolated cases, maybe some gusts into the 70 to perhaps 80-mile-an-hour range. Otherwise, temperatures on the warmer side, much warmer compared to today. We only topped out in low 40s here in Denver today. Tomorrow, low 60s. And then that 7-day forecast will continue to warm things on up as we get into the early part of next week. But our next chance for rain and snow, it comes late next week with perhaps some rain flipping to snow next Thursday.
College students at MSU Denver get a taste of career opportunities in the cannabis industry.
Most of the feedback when I tell people I'm cooking with cannabis is, no, that's not actually happening.
Oh, it's happening, and it's next.
MSU Denver School of Hospitality has a class where most of the homework is edible. Also the kind of course you probably would not find outside of Colorado. Arnold Brennan went to class.
Right now I am trying to accurately measure baking soda.
Baking at altitude is a learning experience.
So you only need a tablespoon.
But a course at MSU Denver mixes in a special ingredient.
So right now I am in the middle of my cooking with cannabis class.
Every recipe includes CBD.
It's a powder in here, that's what the isolate is, and then this is the distillate. And so it's a little bit more plant material.
I mean, it's the distillate and the isolate day. Like, that's a good day. There's only one of those days.
Shannon Donnelly works in the cannabis industry and teaches the course.
We start with federally compliant CBD isolate, which has no THC in it whatsoever. Most of the feedback, what I tell people I'm cooking with cannabis is, no, that's not actually happening. That's not a real class for a college. And it's like, yes, it is, and your students can take it.
Think less dazed and confused, and more dosing and infused.
I don't think they signed up for as much math as they're going to get, but we're doing it every day.
Baking CBD cookies can prep students for a career.
Where do they want to be in cannabis, right? Do they want to be a private chef and make dinners? Do they want to work inside of an edibles manufacturing lab and make gummies or chocolates or things like that? Or do they want to be a bud tender and help people find the products that best for them? And that's kind of this fun thing that I get to kind of help the students figure out.
A class like this, Shannon says, might be the recipe for removing stigma.
It's a cooking class at its core, so if someone rolls their eyes, I would be like, I don't think they like cooking. Pull them out, check them out. Oh yeah, those look good.
In a kitchen classroom, students get a taste of a budding industry.
Yeah, I like it.
For Next, I'm Noel Brennan.
Not bad.
This class is only open to students at MSU Denver, so don't go and show up, okay? It was so popular this semester, they're bringing it back in the spring. No Friday ever goes by without you deciding one of the headlines around here, as long as it's good. That and your feedback next. You didn't think we'd end a Friday without hearing your good news, did you? I know pre-election coverage took up most of our time, but we've been doing this 324 weeks, so let's squeeze one in. Makia Minich is celebrating a new start after the Marshall fire. He got in touch with us to say he started the process to rebuild his home. He's getting ready to lay a new foundation. A fresh start. It's good news indeed. Sharon writes in asking, how's it determined what order the candidates appear on the ballot? Sharon, it's a random drawing, race by race. A lot of feedback on State Representative Tracey Bernett getting busted by prosecutors for apparently not living in her district and not being honest about it. Joe writes, party doesn't matter when you commit crimes. As a Democrat, I'm into this person facing the music. Whereas S says, well, Mark Meadows did this. That's whataboutism for some Republican out of state. Don't pull that garbage. Don't come in here with that. And Jill says, you're a partisan hack. Well, there you go. See you next time.